Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 8 of the course. We're officially over halfway done. It's kind of crazy. We're moving through pretty fast. Okay, so the midterm exam is this week, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. It's going to be taken on Canvas, and it's due when your assignments are normally due by Saturday at midnight. I gave my in-person class a little bit over 24 hours to do it, so I'm going to do the same for you guys. I'm going to make it available Friday morning. So you guys will have from Friday morning at 7 a.m. until midnight on Saturday to complete the exam. The exam is a combination of multiple choice, true, false, and short essay questions. For the multiple choice and true, false, it'll be very similar to the quizzes. And for you guys, the short essay questions will be similar to the discussion questions that we've been looking at in class. So that should give you, the discussion questions we've been utilizing should give you some idea of the format of the short essay questions. In general, I'm looking for, 2 paragraphs roughly on the particular topic. So that's essentially the way the exam is going to work. I've also posted a midterm study guide online. If you guys go to the Files tab, you should be able to find the study guide there. And it essentially talks about, while it doesn't give you like question by question what you need to look at, it gives you a general overview of the topics. So review the quizzes, look through the discussions, make sure that you're familiar with the major ideas from the papers. You don't have to reread the entire paper, but just make sure you understand what that particular author is talking about, and you should be in good shape. And as far as a guide goes for the general types of questions, look at the titles of the weeks that you've been in. Creating the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention. What were some of the issues with the Constitutional Convention? What was required to ratify the Constitution, things like that. And then defending the Constitution, where you get into the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist situation. The United States is a divided political culture. Can we really say that we have one creed, united we stand, we the people, kind of thing, or are we fundamentally divided, and how that affects being in American society? We looked at the role of the media in politics, and what role the media should play, what role the media does actually play, and then finally, one of the things we're going to be what we talked about last week, and we're going to be continuing to talk about a little bit this week, is sort of the electoral process, right? Campaigning, campaign finance reform, which we looked at last week. So if you guys have a good sense of those topics, and there may be 1 or 2 questions from the readings this week on the midterm, so make sure that you do the readings before you take the midterm. The midterm is closed book. It's not like a quiz, so no using external materials to take the midterm. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about the midterm, let me know. Okay, so last week we looked at electoral campaigns, right? And there are a few things to say about campaigns. Typically, in politics, campaigns are broken up into two distinct types of campaigns. The first is the nomination campaign, where the candidate is trying to get nominated for the party. And that one, candidates typically go hard towards the party ideology. If it's conservative, they present a very conservative stance. If it's liberal, they go to the left, right, to try to get the major players in the party to sign on for them to be nominated to be the candidate for that particular party. And this, of course, changes once the nomination happens. They actually go into the general election, and this is the one that the voters actually vote in. And in this, the candidates will actually move towards the center, right? Because they're trying to appeal, as Brooks talked about in his article. He said that there are 3 types of voters, right? There's the very highly partisan voter who's going to vote for Democrat or Republican regardless of who the candidate is. And then there's the apathetic voter who just doesn't care. right? I mean, they're fed up with politics, and they're not going to waste their time. And then there's the person who's interested, the cynical voter, I think Brooks calls them, who is very interested in the political process, but is kind of fed up with traditional party politics. And in the general elections, those are the kind of people that you want to target. You want to target people who are interested in politics but are fed up with the current administration, and that's why politicians always come in with this message of change, right? That's how you appeal to the more cynical voter. So those are the two types of campaigns. And in any campaign, I think I mentioned this last week, there are three sorts of things that you actually have to consider. The first are the players, the key players in the campaign. Who's the candidate, who are the staff for that particular candidate. Then you have to consider sort of the lay of the land, right? What are the current political trends that are happening, and how do you need to sort of adapt and frame your message to fit into the current political landscape? And then the final thing are the rules of the game. What is the legislation that's dictating what you can and can't do in a political campaign? And of course, the biggest thing with that, and the thing I'm going to talk a little bit about now, is this idea of campaign finance, right? Because as we've seen, and as we all intuitively know, it all comes down to money, right? And because these days it costs a lot of money to run a successful campaign. I think close to $3 billion was spent. $3 billion was spent in the last presidential election in the campaign. So tremendous amounts of money are spent, and you simply just can't run a successful campaign without finance from a lot of different sources, right? So, but the problem, of course, with that is if it comes down to who has the most money, it seems like sort of the democratic notion of our government kind of gets swept under the rug, and it's essentially the people who have the most money are the ones who are going to be able to put their agenda forward, right? So there have been several regulations that have been put into place to try to keep this notion of campaign finance in check. The first one was the FECA Act, or the FEC Act that took place in the early 70s. It started in 71. I believe there were adjustments made to it up until 74, 70, actually 76. But anyway, this established the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission, which is sort of the watchdog that's supposed to enforce the election restrictions. Of course, there are lots of criticisms that are leveled against the FEC. One is that, well, first I'll tell you the makeup of the FEC: 6 members and 3 from each party, so it's bipartisan. But those members are appointed by the president, right? Whoever's in office. So one of the criticisms leveled against the FEC is this notion of, there's a term in politics, it's called regulatory capture. And essentially it's used to talk about regulatory agencies, like, for instance, let's think about the Federal Aviation Administration. They have two guiding principles. One is to ensure the safety of air travel, and the second is to promote air travel. And you can see, if you think about it, the way that those two ends can conflict against each other, right? Because they want to promote air travel, therefore they receive a lot of support from United, Boeing, things like that. But on the other hand, they want to make sure air travel is safe, right? But the support that they're getting from the people in the airline industry can kind of curtail their ability to actually do the regulation. So essentially, this idea of regulatory capture is when a regulatory agency becomes beholden to the industry or group that it's supposed to regulate. So people say that that is also the case, can be the case with the FEC. Another thing is, people say it's a toothless tiger. They can't really enforce things, particularly effectively. And finally, if they can enforce things, it usually happens after the fact. It happens after the election has already happened. So how effective is it really if the person's already in office? and they can appoint somebody else to the FEC, right? So if it's in the case of the president, so yeah, you kind of wonder, how effective the FEC really is. But yet, it still does some things. It manages the presidential fund. It conducts audits of campaigns occasionally. So that was created, and the act in the 70s actually put restrictions on hard money contributions that can be made to political campaigns. It limited the amount of money individuals and organizations could donate directly to federal campaigns. But the problem was it didn't specify. It left a loophole where, while money could not be contributed directly to the campaigns, money could be donated to the parties themselves to support political campaigns, to build the strength of the party, to pay for administrative costs that the party might incur. And of course, what happened was that the party would funnel that money indirectly into presidential campaigns. So that loophole allowed a lot of money to be funneled into the campaigns, and we saw from the article by Gattel that Clinton particularly was very effective at using that soft money to promote his campaign, and it really caught on from there. So that's when the McCain-Feingold Act came into place, and essentially the purpose of the McCain-Feingold Act was to close that soft money loophole. So we close this one loophole, right? It looks like we're doing something good. But then there were two rulings that came out of the Supreme Court because people were challenging these notions, or some of the notions, particularly the second clause of the McCain-Feingold was the electioneering clause, right, which was supposed to put a limit on how much money organizations could give to fund presidential or election campaigns, rather. So in the Citizens United ruling, it was in 2010, came out, and that's when the Supreme Court said, you can't limit the amount of money that organizations can give, corporations, organizations can give to these political campaign advertisements and efforts. Because essentially what you're doing is you're curtailing their free speech rights. Because not only do individuals have free speech rights in the United States, but corporations do as well. They're considered as individuals. So that sort of blew the lid off of this idea of contributing money to political advertisements and political campaigns. And this is what led to the rise of these 527 organizations, which have become known as super PACs. And essentially they're conglomerations of different individuals, organizations that are promoting a particular cause or issue, and they're doing it indirectly by sponsoring these particular political ads or whatever. And by law, they're allowed to do that according to the Supreme Court. And once again, there was another case that was heard by the Supreme Court later that year, free speech, where they were talking about this idea of independent expenditures, right? Essentially the idea that individuals or organizations, in this particular case, you can't restrict what they can spend their own money on, as long as it's not directly contributed to the candidate's campaign, but indirectly, they can spend the money however they want. Freedom of expression. So that's what led to the rise of. So even though the soft money loophole was closed, so to speak, there was just simply another opening where that money could flow, right? And it currently it's being that money that was being soft money being funneled in the political parties is now being funneled into these super political action committees, which are indirectly supporting the campaigns by putting out these advocacy advertisements that we see all over the television, all over the internet when election season comes around. So that's what's happening now. And one of the disturbed, so takeaway, right? It's really hard to keep money out of politics. But the disturbing thing is the idea that these super PACs can receive anonymous donations, right? So oftentimes we don't know where the money is coming from to these particular organizations. And there's a loophole in the current legislative mechanism that even people who do, disclose their name to these particular super PACs, the super PACs can actually withhold that information for, up to several months. So by the time the names are actually disclosed, the election could very well be over. So, sure, people can give money to support, political campaigns or political issues directly, indirectly. We can't stop that based on free speech rights. But, we should at least be able to know who is giving money to what particular campaign, right? So we can, as educated voters, we can say, okay, well, the Sierra Club is giving, this amount of money to this particular ad to, support the environment, which they say, John McCain did not support this, right? So they're tying, even though they can't directly address the candidate, they can talk about an issue and then throw, name drop, right? They can name drop either candidate's name in there and say John McCain did not support this, but Barack Obama is a great supporter of environmental regulation, right? Or protecting the environment. So, so there are ways to get around it. But if we don't know, I mean, who could be contributing money to these campaigns, right? I mean, could it be criminals? Foreign entities? Foreign entities through other means. So. There needs to be transparency, right? We need to know where this money that is, even if it's not directly tied to the campaign, it's obviously influencing elections at a huge rate. $400 billion were spent through super PACs in the 2010 elections. So yeah, it's huge. Okay, so this week we're actually going to look a little bit more sort of at the electoral process. We're going to be looking at an article by Schutzen talking about America's ignorant voters, and we're going to be looking at another article talking about sort of civic participation and citizen involvement and the role that citizens actually play in elections. So take a look at those articles. I'll post the discussion question again on Wednesday as usual. That will also be due by Saturday midnight. And the midterm, I'll post on Friday morning. You guys will have until Saturday night at midnight to complete that. No external materials. Study guide is posted. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. Good luck.